Hello everyone and welcome to Brewed in Barnsley with your host me, Matt McGlone. Each episode I'll be joined by a well-known Barnsley personality to discuss how living here has shaped their lives. On this month's episode we're joined by fashion icon Rita Britton. Hi Rita, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Are you okay?
Yep, fine and dandy, seeing as I drank too much wine last night. But...
We don't offer wine. I know you would want one, but we've got water for you.
No, I know
today.
the water's there, yeah.
We should offer tea, though. We've got a teapot. This podcast is called Brewed in Barnsley. The idea being based on Barnsley folks' love of tea.
Yes.
But also about how you yourself have been brewed in Barnsley, made by Barnsley, and
born
your
and
career.
bred.
Yeah. So I always start these podcasts by asking, do you like tea?
Yes. It's the first thing I have in the morning, and it's breakfast tea.
Right, okay.
And it's got to be the Yorkshire brand, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
But I don't like it with milk in. I have to have a slice of lemon in and a spoonful of honey.
Right.
Now, probably those will go, ugh, at that, but that's how I like it. And I only drink it in the morning, but it just seems to get me going in the morning.
Is that to help your voice to sing or something?
Yeah, it sparks me up a bit.
Yeah. So you just said to me you drink too much coffee as well. So is it tea
tea
over coffee?
During the day I drink coffee.
Yeah.
But it's still the ones that comes from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
I won't mention names.
It has to be.
Support the Yorkshire brands.
Has to be a Yorkshire brand.
Yes.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
So no milk at all, just straight.
No, and coffee is black.
Yeah.
And wine's red.
But you're here and you're
Yeah,
all
I'm
right.
here on
And
time.
We've got plenty of water.
Yes.
So most people will know you from your fashion career.
Yes.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you get into fashion in the first place?
Well, if I started at the beginning, I'd have to start with my childhood.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
Because my childhood was absolutely ideal. It was no kid could have been brought up in a better environment than I was. And this was in Honeywell Lane, the housing up there now. They would now be called slums.
Right.
And the worst, what they would see as the worst kind of slums. It was an outside toilet and a tin bath. And you never thought it funny, but maybe 2 or 3 of you got bathed in the tin bath. That was always on a Friday.
My dad used to tell me about that stuff.
But so you know about it, the tin bath.
Yeah.
I once went to the mining centre near Wakefield, and I'd got my grandson with me, and one was hanging on the wall. He said, "What's that?" I said, "It's where I used to get bathed a lot of years ago."
Yeah.
But it was, I lived with my gran. My dad was in the Second World War, and I was actually 3 years old when I first met him.
Right.
And I still can remember the day that I met him.
Wow.
So, but before my dad arrived, I was surrounded by 3 adoring women. That was my auntie, my mum, and my gran, and it was just ideal. Gran ran a kind of small holding, so she had pigs, she had ducks, she had hens. And
this is not all in the house.
Well, no, the chickens were. She used to get day-old chickens, and she'd have a table like this, and there was wire netting round, and it was right next to the fire. So these day-old chicks, I mean, you didn't think anything of it, Maybe there were a lot of people live like that, an old row of houses with fantastic neighbours, and
get your own eggs.
It was, and she would trade. The guy next door, he grew loads of veg, so she would trade we never think about it now, but there wasn't a kitchen. No, there wasn't a kitchen, because there was a black lead fireplace in the front room, and that's where you did the cooking.
Right.
So all the things like the pig swill, etc., was all done in the back room, and there was a great big hook hanging up, and that's where half a pig would be hanging, and you just go and slice off the bacon, because the
fancy a bacon sarnie.
Yeah, because the pig would. It would be in the day before. The pig would be in the tin bath in saltpetre. But it was just
before you're having a bath later.
Yeah. I mean, and then you only got bathed on Friday.
Well, of course. Yes.
And then I had cousins to the left of me, cousins to the right, and it was just an ideal, wonderful childhood to have. Where did I start my career? Yeah. Well, I then went to work at somewhere called Star Paper Mill, where Asda is now. And that's where Star Paper Mill was, because obviously the fleets run past and you needed the water because it was a paper mill.
Yes.
And I started work there, and that was considered a really, really good job. They used to be saying that it was a bit like getting into Eton College, right. Becoming employed by the paper mill.
Really?
And
as in, it was difficult to get that, or as in?
Well, you'd always got to have. There was a sense of you'd got to have family working there,
right? Okay.
Because the family would keep you in check. Okay. You would have older aunties and older uncles working there. So you knew where your place was. You really knew it. And then we were bought out by a Finnish company, because obviously in Finland they grow lots of wood. Yep. And we were bought out as the bigger mill was, and I think that was in Bolton or somewhere, but that was bigger than ours. And we were bought out by the Finns. So our new boss was starting work that morning, and we, the mill girls, we'd never seen him, but he was Finnish.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what it looked like or anything about him. And I remember us all getting, there was a lot of girls worked in that saw, because we had to sort and count paper. I still can do it.
I was going to say, what kind of work
You'd stand there and sort the paper, then you flicked it up and you counted it into reams, and then you stacked it.
Right.
And so we knew at 10 o'clock, because she started work at 7:45 in the morning, and at 10 o'clock the whistle would go, and that was break time. And we knew that he would come into the saw, because at one end of the wall was the door that went into the workers' canteen, and at the other end of the wall there was the door that went into the staff canteen. And he walked through the main door, and he turned immediate right into the workers' canteen. And I have to tell you, that man never went into the staff canteen.
Okay.
And he learnt more about that business from picking up a tray and queuing with the other blokes in their overalls, right?
I bet, yeah.
And you just, when I look back now, I think what an absolutely amazing man he was. But then I remember thinking that one of the biggest problems in this country is that we still subscribe to a class system. Right? Still subscribe to it. And then you realise that possibly the Finns didn't.
Right.
Where is it that we're so class-ridden in this society that we live in?
So he was learning from the workers.
But he would sit with the workers, talk to the workers, and then he found out, because if they sent out a lorry load of paper, and that would go to a printing mill in Watford or somewhere, and if they looked through the first two reams and there were faults in them, the whole lot would have to come back. And then he realised he'd got one young lass in there that could drive a car.
Right, okay.
And that was me, because my dad was a lorry driver.
Okay.
I passed my test when I was 17 and 2 months. And in those days, I know you can't believe it now, but I think I was one of the first females in this town that could drive a car. So you were
very sought after then, when people wanted to drive.
He kind of realised that, here he'd got a lass. He didn't have to bring all that paper back, because she could take 2 working colleagues with her straight down to Watford and sort it out there. Right. And that was a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Now, that, if you want to know where the fashion came from, because that kind of gave me my first instinct that there were other ways of doing it, because it raised my awareness.
Okay.
So that I could do other things.
Yeah.
And in those,
and you got out of your usual
in those
pattern
days,
and drove away.
You could, it was the kind of late 60s, and you could do what. There weren't boutiques around, as they were called then.
No.
They weren't out there. They only, if you wanted to buy a new frock or whatever, you went to the cooperative and you probably bought one a size smaller than your mother's.
Right.
So there wasn't...
Or a lot of hand-me-down clothes, I imagine, as well, do you think?
No, because your mum was always slightly bigger than you
right,
were.
Okay.
Right. But yes, there were women out there that made clothes for you or copied. You might, even Vogue was around in those days, and you might see something in Vogue and you take it to Mrs. Bloggs down the road. You go buy your fabric from the market and she'd huff and puff at it, but then she started.
Give it a go and make it.
So I kind of got on the wagon of opening my first shop, and that was in Shamble Street. That's...
Yes.
I mean, they pulled it down years ago, but it was great. I think the rent was something like £4 a month or something like that. But then, then I started going to London, and that was a big eye opener. I can remember driving down there the first time and going, probably hitting London about 9-10 o'clock at night, because I thought, like Barnsley, it would be quiet.
Yeah. It's alive,
shock.
Isn't it?
What a shock.
Yeah.
So that was my first drive down there and to look. And one of the first people I stopped was Mary Quant.
Right. Okay. Quant, yes. Yeah. Did she design the
She set everybody up with the mini, and I can remember I had managed to slip down some wooden steps and I had broken my ankle, but I got to get to London. And in those days, it wasn't that easy. I know we think it's not easy now to jump on a train, and we know that it's not. But in those days, it was even more difficult. So my dad, God love him, worked at Redfern's, and he did shift work. And I remember I couldn't drive, and he came in from the night shift and had a bacon butty or something, got in the car and drove me to London. And then he parked in a side street and had a nap.
Right.
And, I did my order with Mary Quant. And I still remember they did a very small show, not big and like it is now, because it's that bigger is better kind of thing. And those who don't know better sit there with their sunglasses on. But he had his nap, and they served me my lunch at Mary Quant, and I can remember there were tiny little sandwiches that big, with the crust.
Less is more for everything as well, the food as well.
And they got a cucumber on them, and that was it. And I can remember thinking, God, wait till I tell my gran, they must be really hard up to serve cucumber sandwiches. I had a lot to learn in those days.
Yeah.
And also, the other thing that you had to overcome was that they thought if you spoke with a Yorkshire accent, you were thick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what they thought.
Well, everyone on television was very well spoken, weren't
terribly.
At the time,
BBC,
and radio were very...
and, I mean, you got to have that terribly BBC accent.
Yeah.
So because you spoke with a Yorkshire accent, they thought, ooh, we've got a real yoik here.
So I just want to go back a little bit. So you did the driving at the paper mill. Where did the fashion then come in? Where did you think?
Well, because all young people felt it. It was in the bones.
Right. So you had this calling to.
Well, it
to
was
design.
People of your age don't realise it was a revolution.
Yeah, in the 60s, yeah.
It was emergence of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. It was a real revolution, because they'd come from my dad's era, which was, the army and towing the line and not breaking the law and going to work every day and working 3 shifts. And all of a sudden, it was wham bang. It was... They were out there.
Yeah.
And I think that what happened then is that you thought, I can. Yeah, of course I can do that. Yeah. I can go and buy Mary Quant. And that's where I started.
Yeah. And so why how did you decide to set up the shop in Barnsley then? How did that come about? Because that's quite a big step, isn't it? To go, yeah, I like fashion, it's everywhere, but then to go, do you know what? I'm going to set up my own shop. How did that come about?
I don't know. I think that has to be a certain nature. I can remember talking to somebody only yesterday, and she said, "How's it going?" Knowing that a month ago I had a stroke. The day after I'd had the stroke, I drove to Scarborough. I didn't know I'd had a stroke, and I picked my cousin up. Anyway, and she said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Yeah, we're just setting up our own photographic unit. We're getting the website ready." And she kind of said, "Yeah, well, what in this economic climate, so on and so forth." And I said, "Yeah, but we're a bit like the SAS, those who dare win."
Yeah.
And it wasn't just me. It was all of a sudden, it was like shackles being taken off youth.
Yeah.
The whole youth culture exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I remember years after talking to a young man whose dad would have been my age and had come into the shop when I was in Market Hill.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his dad, and his dad was grumbling about the way he dressed and whatever. And I said, "Shall I tell you something? I remember him when he wore little round glasses and he got a droopy moustache." "What, my dad?" But that was it.
Yeah.
There was a youth explosion. And I don't think there's been one since.
No.
Really.
Well, we're all on social media now, aren't we? We're sort of buried in phones, do you think, rather than kind of out there?
Yeah, yeah.
So you saw your opportunity then in the 60s. You took that opportunity, had the shop, went down to London, and then you opened was that the Pollyanna boutique then, or did you then go and do that?
No, we were in Shamble Street for about 4 years, and then we moved into where the post office is.
Oh yes, down Market.
And then we moved down, down the arcade there, just off. I tell you, I forgot
the arcade, yeah, yeah.
And then we took the store in Market Hill.
Yeah.
And by that time, it all sounds very quick, doesn't it? It's like one bang, 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 but it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't. And by the time we moved into Market Hill, I was already... And you think it happens quickly, but it doesn't happen quickly. It happens very slowly. Mm-hmm. Your taste changes. And we'd moved away from the kind of 60s. We'd moved... I can remember the Japanese designers, Issey Miyake, Comme des Garçons, and Yohji Yamamoto, all showing in Paris in the 80s. And I picked up on the Japanese.
Right, okay.
And we, in Barnsley, were the first one to get all 3 Japanese designers under the roof at one go.
Wow.
And that was because in those days, they would not supply the big stores. They had their own flagship shops.
Okay.
So each one in London had their own shop.
Okay.
So we were the only store in the whole of this country to have all 3 of them under one roof.
How did you manage that then?
Well, because there was nobody else, nobody in Barnsley. Because in London they couldn't do it. They kept control.
Yeah.
But in Barnsley I could have all 3.
Yeah.
Because nobody else was going to stop them.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a bit of a lunatic time. And there is now an incredibly iconic department store around called Dover Street Market, and they've got a store in London, they've LA, New York, Paris, Tokyo. But we were the forerunner of that.
Right.
And funnily enough, the guy who runs the Ocean Boodle, I trained him. He came from Glasgow. And he still rings me up as he did the other day. "How are you going, Rita? You all right?"
No, fantastic. You must have worked with some very high-end designers or people that have now gone on to become... to own their own stores and stuff as well, have you?
We've worked... Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a hell of a lot. But there's one thing about coming from Barnsley
Mm-hmm.
is, and the old, maybe it was my upbringing, I don't know, but you don't get carried away with the rubbish bit of it, because at the end of the day it's an industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about the figures now, but at that point it was bigger than the car industry. Right, so you only need to know that.
Yeah.
And you don't get carried away with the old bling thing and the walking around when it's a day like today with a pair of sunglasses on.
Yeah.
You know, you just think, idiot. And so, you know, being born in Barnsley made the fact that you got your feet firmly on the floor.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I think about the fashion aspect of it, in my opinion, my mum's taste in clothing was dire.
Different era, though, Rita.
No, it was a different era, but she liked a bit of bling, and I'm not a bling person. She liked a bit of bling.
Okay.
And later on in years, after my dad had died, and I would drive down to see her, she just lived just off of Honeywell Lane, and I'd go in to see her after work, and she'd look me up and down, and she'd say, "Well, if you don't look her, don't swear."
Bleep.
Bling.
Yeah.
Da-da. And I'd think, yep, I've got it right.
Yeah, she didn't like it.
She didn't like it, I'm there.
Yeah. So you designed then your own.
Well, then we
lines
started
as well,
designing our own line, and then I kind of discovered that that it was really one of our best sellers. Because one of the things that I absolutely love about my industry is dealing with the textile people.
Right.
They're totally different from the fashion brigade.
Okay, how come?
They're engineers, they're feet on the floor, they're technical. They know everything about the fabric that you're wearing. They can get hold of that. They know how many, what's it to the inch there is. And I went to London a couple of weeks ago. There was a fabric exhibition in London, and a lot of our suppliers were there. Because the only person we deal with on textiles outside of Yorkshire is Japanese. It's a Japanese supplier, and even they were there. So I knew loads of people there, and it's like a bit like you going into a pub and seeing people you know.
Yeah.
There's none of the dark sunglasses and anti-wonderful.
Yeah.
The feet on the floor and they know their subject. I love textiles.
Yeah.
In fact, I would have to say that everything that I am wearing today is what we have manufactured, and everything has come out of Yorkshire. Everything. Textile, made in. Silk pants, made in. Cashmere sweater, made in.
Yeah. So let's go back to Pollyanna.
All right.
Let's talk about your store. It's now, for people listening now, it's where Old George is now, isn't it? Or down the side of there.
It was two. It was where the Old George is and where Taboo is.
Yes.
And we joined the two together.
Yeah. And it was so well known.
It was iconic. But when you are working in something, you don't realise how iconic it is, because we've just produced a leather bag.
I've seen this.
Which says like New York, London, Milan, all crossed out, and then Barnsley underneath. That was a quote from Vogue about 1998, because they did an article about Pollyanna.
Okay.
And that was the quote they put on, and we've now put that on our bag.
Are you amazed with the success it had?
No, because I'm not amazed, because it was damned hard work, and there was a lot of heartache in it. In fact, I think one of the last times I went into Pollyanna, I thought, I can't do this anymore, because I just had a heart attack, and then I had a massive stroke. And I thought, if I don't get off this bandwagon, it's going to kill me. Because I was working with fantastic young people, but they always wanted to fly And you know what you should do? The saying goes, what the best thing you can do for young people is let them fly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like now I work with a couple of interns at the moment, and I am amazed how fantastic they are.
Yeah.
They leave me with my mouth open. They're so knowledgeable, and one of them did fashion at Barnsley College. The other one's a Huddersfield girl, and when the lassie from Barnsley College has gone to work to do some work with J.W. Anderson, who is one of the top designers in London, through my contact in New York with my friend, my ex-buyer. But I would never send them out to anybody else unless I thought they were good enough to do it. Mm-hmm. And she's now working in London. She's then got, I think, another year to do at uni. And all she wants to do is come back and set up her own business in Barnsley, which is fantastic.
That is fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think there's, well, you've just said it really, but do you think there are opportunities for people from Barnsley now to get into the fashion world and to even, like say, set up a shop here in Barnsley as well? Do you think there's still that opportunity now?
The setting up shop, I'm not sure about, because over the years I've watched the whole thing change. Mm. When we had Pollyanna in Market Hill, we used to get people from London came to us. In fact, even now, one of my best clients is a London barrister.
Yeah.
Right, but I think the old thing has changed now. Mm. It's people don't want to travel anymore because they can go online. I mean, we're just now setting up photographic studio, which is going to allow us to take some really slick photographs for the website.
Yeah, so you can ship them out to people.
And the great thing about most of our clothing now actually is shipped out to people. And if I tell you that we get less than 1% returns on them.
Right.
So, and that's quite something. But I love, it's a bit like talking about the textile people, is that I love working where I am working now because it's hands-on. I'm working with people who are in there making things. They're cutting patterns, they're sewing things, they're trying new samples out. We get regular textile deliveries 3-4 times a week, and that's where I want to be. So all the time I have almost chosen when the next step is going to take me, not deliberately. I've not thought this is where I want to be.
Well, I was going to say
kicked my legs from under me, and I'm now doing it in a different way.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up because I mean, talking to you now, I'm amazed by it. Really, you shut down the shop at Pollyanna because, like you've mentioned, that you had a heart attack and a stroke.
Yeah.
And you've not retired. You're not giving up, are you? You've gone straight back to it.
I did. I closed Pollyanna, and then I went into Nomad, and I think we were in Nomad because I decided that one of the killers about is that when you are dealing with the big boys, that's the ones in Paris or the ones in Milan, they are tough and they are cruel. Mm-hmm. And they try to make you feel about 4 inches tall.
Right.
Because that's the theory of it.
Okay.
And I remember once buying menswear, because we did men's as well, and I was buying Jules Sander, and they bring a selling team in, and that selling team, their job is to make sure they take 10% more off you this season than they did last.
Right.
That's what they're... And if they don't achieve that, they don't get a job there next time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember doing menswear, and I got my son with me, my eldest son, who used to come and do the menswear with me. And the Italian woman said, this is, everybody is buying this. And it was winter white. Right, can you imagine you walking around here in January with a winter white suit on?
I can't.
No, you can't, can you?
I spill a lot down it as well.
And I'm saying, well, and I'm trying to be polite, and I'm saying, well, I mean, I come from north of England, and we just went, no, I cannot believe you cannot sell this. Every store I know and everyone I serve, they take it. It is going to be the best seller ever. And I remember my son looking at her and he said, right, that jacket will take a dozen. And the trousers, well, we'll double up on that. We'll take a couple of dozen of the... And I'm like thinking, is he mad? What's wrong with him? And then he just looked at her. And I mean, he was fairly young then. Yeah. And he looked at her and he said, but it's going to be a really good seller, isn't it? She, oh. He said, well, I'll tell you what, every piece we don't sell, we'll send back to you.
Yeah.
And she looked him in the face, and I think he was probably in his mid-20s then, and he got a massive hair, and he was a good-looking lad. And she looked at him and she said, Marco, you have the face of an angel and the soul of a devil.
How many did you send back?
We didn't take any.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I thought she might have agreed with that.
No.
So we talked about you growing up in Barnsley. How amazed are you about how much the town has changed in particularly recent years? Because there's been
I'm
loads
amazed.
of developments. Yeah.
I look at other towns in our vicinity, like, the other towns, Sheffield, which is still on with it, Bradford, which are still on with it. I look at Wakefield, and I would have to say that I think what we've done in this town is absolutely gobsmacking. I think it's slick, it's curated, it's pulled in the old bit of the town into the new bit of the town, and I think the job which has been done has been fantastic. I really do.
Do you go out and about in the town centre?
No, I don't.
Shopping these days, or out for some food, or?
Well, if I go shopping, I go to Holland and Barrett
Yes.
for my vitamins,
Yes.
or I'll nip to Boots.
Yeah.
But in the main, no, I think I've handed that over to the younger members of Barnsleyites now. But, I have been to one or two of the cafes and that. And also I went into the library the other day because I've spoken with Steve Houghton. In fact, I've got a meeting with him in October. And one of the things about working with the students that I have worked with, I realise how clever these kids are. I'm going to work with a young lad who's just finished his A-levels, but he's decided he wants to be a photographer, and he's turning out some amazing photography.
Wow. Yeah.
And the two students that I'm working with were studying fashion, and I had a meeting with Steve Houghton, and I have another one coming up, about giving the kids from college a space to exhibit what they are doing. So if they're into fashion, then you take the creme de la creme that you've got and you put it in there. If they're into photography, yes, let's show the world what we can do in Barnsley. But nowhere that we can showcase what these kids are capable of doing.
Were you involved at all with the Barnsley fashion show that was around last year?
No. I didn't really feel I wanted to get into it. I'd done it too long.
You've done it enough.
No.
But I brought that up because there was a little space in the Glassworks last year where some students did exhibit some of their designs and their work, and you're right, that kind of thing is fantastic.
Well, they might get a job through it. If somebody, the one that's in London at the moment working for J.W. Anderson, and he designs for a company called Loewe. She just wants to come back to Barnsley, and she's put the feelers out with me that when she does come back, would there be a job there for her? Yeah, would there? This one that's working with me at the moment, she leaves me on the 18th of October, and I'm almost slightly panic-stricken, and that's two of them,
But it seems like there's a lot of people coming up, so if you need to replace them for a time.
But I'm not easy for working with new people, though.
No.
It takes a while to, I'd said something a bit rude that I'll not say on here today the other day, and I looked at her and I said, does your mum swear? And she said, you should hear her. I said, thank goodness for that.
So, what are you doing now, Rita, by the way? So we've talked about the Pollyanna stuff and when that closed, and then you've moved on to something else. Tell us about where you are now.
Well, we're in the business village, run by an amazing guy called Kevin Steele. And we've got in there is a manufacturing unit. But it's a great place to be because there are loads of creative people around. Mm-hmm. There's photographers around. The people who are designing our website is there. And so it's and they've even got a bistro in there, that I can go at 1:00 and have some lunch in there. Yeah. And I love it because I'm right in the centre of being where I should have been, but it takes a long time to get where you should have been.
Yeah.
And I realise that the regret that I've got was that I never learnt to pattern cut and sew. I know what it needs to look like. Mm-hmm. I know the fabric we are using, but I've got amazing women with me who do know how to do that.
Yeah. And
they're brilliant at it, but I just think, you know what you should have done? You should have learnt this a long time ago.
So are you selling your own line again then? Is it?
We're selling Pollyanna. We went back to Pollyanna.
Oh, yes.
Because when I moved into George Yard, I just wanted to leave the old iconic thing of Pollyanna behind me. And our own brand we called Nomad, because the whole idea of it was that it goes in the washing machine, you take it out and you put it on. And so you can go anywhere in it.
I thought it was about because you've moved shops that many times.
No, I mean, that's over 55 years, that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what? I just always thought with Pollyanna, that the name was so dated. It was so late 60s, early 70s. It was a very dated name. And then I just thought, nah, it's always been good to me.
But it's a known name, yeah.
Take it back. Mm. So that's what we did. We took it back. I did retire for about 3 months. Mm. And I think my husband was more than glad to see the back of me.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, sort of finally, Rita, really, why did you stay in Barnsley? What made you stay here? When you've gone down, you've met Merrick, you've gone to the Merrick one, you've seen all this stuff going in London, the big lights, and your brand's known across the world. Why did you think Barnsley's the place to stay here?
First of all, if I have to be absolutely honest about it, there was a sense of security. There was a thing about the place that I don't think you get anywhere else. And I can remember when I used to go down to London and do my buying, and I'd get off the train and I'd drive home, and we live in Hoyland, which is 1,000 feet up. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I'd do, I'd get out the car and I would breathe. I would breathe. And I don't know, I always felt safe in Barnsley. There is a sense of safety. There's a sense of, if you needed some help, you could walk up to somebody and say, I'm not feeling well, or this, that and the other. Mm-hmm. Whereas in London, they'd just walk straight past you. Mm-hmm. Think you're on drugs or something. It was always, I always had a deep sense of absolute love of this town.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like Dickie Bird, aren't I?
Well, you're getting there. No, well, I think there's a great sense of love for you as well. I mentioned to someone yesterday that you were coming on this podcast, and they went, absolute icon. She's an icon.
Oh, bless.
So I think Barnsley's very thankful that you've stayed around, and you've left such a big mark on the town, I think, for sure. So, yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's been problem. Great.
Well, thanks for joining us. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.